The air in the chapel hangs thick with the scent of old wood, lilies, and something else, something sharp and metallic, like fear. My own, maybe. Or hers. My sister Sarah's baby, little Michael, is slick with the baptismal water, squalling a perfect, indignant sound. The priest murmurs blessings. The flashbulbs pop, a manufactured moment of pure, unadulterated joy for the family album. And I am standing here, on the periphery, watching, trying to look like I belong, trying to breathe through the suffocating weight of their collective expectation, their silent judgment. They're all here. The aunts who cluck their tongues, the cousins who make polite, vacant chatter, the uncles who avoid my gaze, perhaps unsure how to categorize the unmarried, childless woman in their midst who somehow built a life for herself elsewhere, far from their watchful eyes. And then there is my mother. She stands next to Sarah and Mark, beaming, the picture of proud grandparenthood. Her eyes, when they find mine across the aisle, are not warm. They are cool, assessing, dismissive. She waits until the crowd around the font thins slightly, waits until the moment feels pointed, private enough to wound but public enough to make retreat impossible. She leans towards me, her voice low but carrying that familiar, venomous edge that only a mother knows precisely how to wield. "He's perfect, isn't he?" she says, her smile not reaching her eyes. She doesn't wait for an answer. Her gaze sweeps over me, lingering just long enough on my simple dress, my lack of a ring, my empty arms. The silence stretches, the air humming with unspoken comparison. Then, she delivers the line, the one designed to cut deepest, to confirm everything I've ever feared she believed. "You'll never have what they do." The words land like stones in my gut. They echo in the sudden silence that seems to fall around us, a silence I imagine is only real to me, a sudden deafness to the ambient sounds of the ceremony. Never. What they do. Family. This perfect, squalling, wet bundle of future and belonging. The easy way they fit together. The assumed trajectory of their lives. And mine? A dead end, a failure to launch into the expected orbit of wife and mother. Her eyes hold a pity so cold, it feels like contempt. It says, "You missed the boat. You chose your own path, and look where it left you. Alone. Empty." Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Her words burrowed into the softest parts of me, finding all the old wounds, the places where doubt had already taken root. It wasn't just about children, not really. It was about belonging, about validation, about a lifetime of feeling like I was never quite enough, never living up to the picture she held in her mind of what a daughter should be. Sarah had always been the easy one, the one who followed the path, the one who made her proud. I was the one who asked too many questions, who went too far away for college, who chose a demanding career over finding a husband, who dared to be different. And in her eyes, that difference was a defect. Growing up, our house wasn't a place of open affection. It was a place of unspoken rules and subtle disapproval. My mother was a woman who believed appearances were everything, and anything that disrupted the placid surface of normal family life was to be hidden or, failing that, criticized into submission. Sarah was good at gliding over that surface. I always felt like I was dragging anchor along the bottom, kicking up mud. If I got a good grade, she'd ask why it wasn't perfect. If I had a boyfriend, she'd find fault with him. If I talked about my dreams, she'd gently but firmly steer me back towards what was sensible. Sensible meaning safe, small, and predictable. My career in corporate law, successful by any objective measure, was met with a shrug and a question about when I planned to settle down. My apartment in the city, the one I'd worked so hard for, was described as lonely. Every achievement felt diminished by the unspoken asterisk, "But you don't have a family." It was a constant, low-grade hum of inadequacy that permeated every family gathering, every phone call. Then came the fertility struggles. Years of trying with a partner who eventually walked away, unable to bear the weight of the process. The invasive tests, the hope that soared only to crash, the emotional and physical toll. It was a deeply private pain, One I couldn't share with my family, not with my mother, because it felt like admitting failure on a fundamental level she already expected of me. It would be proof, in her eyes, that I couldn't even get this most basic, most sensible thing right. When that relationship ended, and the quiet longing for a child didn't, I knew I had a choice. I could let my mother's narrative win, accept that I was somehow destined to be the outlier, the one who didn't have what they do. Or I could find my own way. The thought of conventional dating and starting the process over felt impossible. The desire for a child, for the unique connection of family built by choice and love, became a relentless ache. I started reading. I talked to friends who had navigated unconventional paths. I researched single parenthood by choice, surrogacy, adoption. Each option felt daunting, fraught with its own complexities, its own potential for judgment from the world, and especially for my mother. The decision wasn't sudden. It was a slow, agonizing climb towards a peak I wasn't sure I could reach. It involved countless hours of introspection, therapy, financial planning, and wading through medical and legal complexities that felt designed to discourage the faint of heart. I chose the surrogacy path. It felt like the right fit for me, a way to experience a biological connection while respecting my current life and circumstances. It was also terrifyingly expensive and emotionally vulnerable. I met with agencies, lawyers, and doctors. I went through the emotional process of selecting a surrogate, finding someone I trusted implicitly, someone who understood the significance of the journey we were undertaking together. Every step of that process was shrouded in secrecy from my family. I told a few close friends, people who offered unwavering support and understanding. But telling my mother? It felt like inviting criticism, doubt, and perhaps even sabotage. I could already hear the questions. Was this sensible? Was this fair to the child? Wouldn't it be better to just find a nice man? The thought of navigating that while also navigating the anxieties and uncertainties of pregnancy via surrogacy was too much. The secret became a shield, a quiet space where my hope could grow undisturbed by her negativity. The pregnancy itself was a period of intense, private anticipation. My surrogate, bless her, kept me updated, sharing scans and feelings. I went to appointments when I could, sitting in waiting rooms filled with traditional families, feeling a strange mix of belonging and isolation. I was doing this thing that was so fundamentally human, so tied to the core of having what they do, yet I was doing it outside the lines my family had drawn. There were moments of profound joy, hearing the heartbeats for the first time, feeling the phantom kicks I imagined in my own body, mixed with moments of intense fear. What if something went wrong? What if, after all this, it didn't happen? And always, the question lingered, how would I tell my family?
When?
The plan initially was to wait until the babies were home, settled. Maybe send an announcement. Maybe call. Ease them into it. But as the due date approached, and the invitations to Michael's baptism arrived, a different feeling began to surface. It wasn't just anxiety about telling them. It was a simmering resentment, a deep-seated hurt that had been building for decades, fueled by 1,000 small cuts and culminating in the pervasive feeling that I was a disappointment. The baptism felt like a public coronation of everything I was supposedly lacking. My sister, the golden child, with her perfect family, center stage. And me, relegated to the background, a silent observer of the life I was told I would never have. The twins were born a few weeks before the baptism. 2 healthy, beautiful babies. A boy and a girl. Holding them for the first time was an explosion of everything: relief, love, exhaustion, overwhelming responsibility, and a fierce protectiveness I hadn't known I was capable of. Their arrival changed everything, not just my life, but my perspective. My mother's words, her judgments, suddenly felt smaller, more pathetic. I had created this, built this family, against the odds, against her unspoken disapproval, against the path she had laid out for me. This wasn't a consolation prize. It was the jackpot. As the baptism date loomed, the initial plan of a quiet announcement felt insufficient. It felt like hiding again, like minimizing this monumental, joyous event in my life to fit into the small box my family had built for me. The resentment morphed into something colder, sharper. Why should I tiptoe around their expectations? Why should I soften the truth to make them comfortable? They had never extended that courtesy to me. The idea solidified gradually, taking root in the fertile ground of old hurts and new, fierce pride. It wasn't about revenge, not exactly. It was about a definitive reclaiming of my narrative. It was about showing, not telling, in the most undeniable way possible, that I had built my own what they do, and it was just as valid, just as precious, perhaps even more so because of the struggle it took to get here. The baptism, the very stage set to highlight my perceived lack, was the perfect place. The timing felt almost karmic. Her words, delivered in that specific moment of family triumph, would be met with my own. The planning became meticulous. It felt almost military. I arranged childcare for the twins for the ceremony itself. I didn't want to cause a scene during the sacred part, and frankly, newborns at a church service is stressful enough without the added layer of emotional warfare. A trusted friend, Sarah, who had been my rock through the surrogacy journey, agreed to be my accomplice. She would stay in the car, parked discreetly down the street, with the babies and all their gear, waiting for my signal. We worked out timings, contingencies. It felt absurdly complex, coordinating a covert infant operation for a baptism. The morning of the baptism was a blur of nervous energy. I dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that felt strong and confident, not like the shrinking violet I often felt forced to be around my family. The drive to the church felt surreal. I chatted with Sarah, running through the plan one last time, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. She was excited for me, this quiet warrior who had witnessed my pain and was now helping me claim my victory. Walking into the church alone was the hardest part. The familiar smells, the hushed reverence, the sea of familiar faces turning to watch latecomers. I felt exposed, vulnerable. I took a seat towards the back, trying to seem inconspicuous, observing the scene unfolding at the front. My sister looked radiant, her husband proud, and my mother was in her element, basking in the glow of her daughter's conventional success, her new role as a grandmother. Watching her, a wave of something complex washed over me, not just anger, but a deep, aching sadness for the relationship we never had, the one that was always conditional on me fitting into her mold. I sat through the service, the priest's words washing over me, occasionally catching a phrase about blessing and family and new life. Each mention felt pointed, a reminder of my perceived status. My mother glanced back a few times, her expression unreadable from this distance, but I could feel the weight of her presence, the silent pressure. I focused on the ritual, the ancient rhythm of the ceremony, trying to calm the frantic beat of my own heart. Then came the moment everyone moved towards the font. The proud parents, the godparents, the grandparents. My mother was front and center, her face a mask of proud satisfaction. It was after the baptismal water had been poured, after Michael had been wrapped in his white shawl, after the initial congratulations were being exchanged near the font, that the crowd began to disperse slightly, mingling in the aisle. This was the window. This was the moment. My mother drifted towards the edges of the group, somehow always finding a way to isolate me for a brief, cutting exchange. That's when she cornered me, her voice low, the cruel words delivered with surgical precision. "He's perfect, isn't he? You'll never have what they do." The world tilted slightly. The air went thin. Those words, the culmination of decades of subtle and not-so-subtle disapproval, hung between us. For a split second, the old instincts kicked in, the urge to shrink, to deflect, to retreat. My stomach clenched, my breath hitched. The heat rose in my cheeks. It was the familiar shame, the familiar pain. But then, something shifted. This time, her words didn't just wound. They ignited something cold and powerful within me. Never have what they do? Was that a challenge? A curse? A prediction she was determined to see fulfilled? Not anymore. Not ever again. The feeling wasn't rage. It was a quiet, absolute certainty. A resolve that settled deep in my bones, firm and unyielding. I met her gaze, held it. For the first time in my life, I didn't look away. Her smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of something like surprise, perhaps at my lack of immediate, wounded reaction. My voice was steady, calm, almost unnervingly so. "Excuse me," I said, the two words a small stone dropped into the tense silence between us. I didn't wait for a response. I turned, walking away from her, towards the back of the church, my steps purposeful. The familiar scent of the old chapel faded as I pushed open the heavy doors and stepped out into the crisp air. The sunlight, bright after the dim interior, made me squint. I pulled out my phone, my fingers slightly fumbling. I sent the precomposed text. Now. The seconds stretched into an eternity. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat. Doubt, for a fleeting moment, tried to creep in. Was this insane? Was I about to blow up my family dynamics forever for one moment of what? Vindication?
It felt like more than that.
It felt like survival. Like finally claiming my space in the world, the space I had built myself. Then, down the street, I saw her. Sarah, my friend, emerging from the car, two swaddled bundles held carefully in her arms. Relief washed over me, so potent it made my knees feel weak. They were here. They were real. I walked towards her, my pace quickening. We met on the sidewalk just outside the church entrance. She smiled, a mixture of excitement and nervous energy mirroring my own. She carefully transferred the bundles to me. The weight of them, warm and solid in my arms, grounded me instantly. My son, curled in a light blue blanket, his face peaceful in sleep. My daughter, nestled in pink, stirring slightly, letting out a tiny sigh. They smelled of baby powder and that sweet, milky scent unique to newborns. They were perfect. My perfect. I took a deep breath, letting the reality of them fill me up. The anxiety was still there, a low hum beneath the surface, but it was overshadowed by a profound sense of rightness. This was not just a response to my mother. It was an affirmation of my life, my choices, my own burgeoning family. Holding them close, one arm supporting each little body, I turned back towards the church entrance. The heavy door stood open, a rectangle of dim light framed by stone. I could hear the murmur of voices inside, the lingering sounds of the post-ceremony mingling. This was it. No more hiding. No more excuses. I walked back inside. The sudden transition from bright sunlight to the church's interior felt dramatic. My eyes adjusted slowly, but I didn't hesitate. I walked with a measured pace, heading not towards the edges this time, but directly into the heart of the mingling crowd. The weight of the babies felt substantial, real, a tangible counterpoint to the airy, baseless judgment I'd just received. Heads began to turn. First a few peripheral figures, then more. A ripple went through the room as people noticed me, noticed what I was carrying. The murmuring voices softened, then fell silent altogether. All eyes were on me. I kept walking, my gaze fixed. I didn't look at anyone specifically, just straight ahead, towards the area near the font where my mother and sister were still talking to a small group. The silence expanded, became deafening. I could hear the soft sound of my own footsteps on the stone floor, the tiny, quiet breaths of the babies in my arms. My mother was facing away from me initially, still smiling, still holding court.
Sarah saw me first.
Her eyes widened, her mouth dropping open slightly. She nudged my mother. My mother turned, and she froze. The smile vanished from her face, as if wiped away by an invisible hand. Her eyes, moments before filled with triumphant satisfaction, widened to saucers. They fixed on the bundles in my arms, then on my face, then back to the bundles. Recognition, confusion, and something akin to shock warred in her expression. Her cheeks, usually tinged with a healthy flush, paled dramatically.
She didn't speak.
She couldn't. I stopped a few feet away from her, close enough for her to see them clearly, close enough for the reality to land with full force. I didn't say a word. There was no grand pronouncement needed. The babies in my arms were the statement. 2 of them. Twins. The absolute, undeniable antithesis to her cruel prediction just moments before. The silence in the church was now absolute, heavy with unspoken questions, with stunned realization. Everyone was watching. They looked at me, at the babies, at my mother's frozen face. My sister, Sarah, recovered first. A small, hesitant smile touched her lips, a look of dawning understanding and maybe even admiration. Mark, my brother-in-law, looked utterly bewildered. My mother remained frozen, her mouth slightly agape, her eyes darting between my face and the baby's. It was the most utterly speechless I had ever seen her. The woman who always had a cutting remark, a pointed question, a subtle criticism ready on her tongue, had nothing. She was completely blindsided. Her carefully constructed reality, where I was the failure, the one who would never have what they do, had just shattered before her eyes. I shifted the babies slightly, adjusting their blankets, feeling the warmth of their tiny bodies. I looked directly at my mother, my expression calm, perhaps even a little sad for her. Sad that she was so invested in my perceived lack that she couldn't even process this moment of profound creation, of new life. These, I said, my voice clear and steady in the silence, are my children. It wasn't defiant, not really. It was simply a statement of fact. An unassailable truth held warm and breathing in my arms. The confirmation of having what they do, not in the way she expected, not on her timeline, but on my own. The moment stretched, taut, and brittle. My mother's eyes seemed to glaze over slightly, her focus lost somewhere beyond me. She didn't reach out. She didn't ask their names. She didn't offer congratulations. She simply stood there, a statue of disbelief and thwarted expectation. The silence was finally broken by an aunt, a kind woman who had always been a little softer than the rest. "Oh my," she whispered, stepping forward hesitantly. "Twins? They're beautiful." Her words seemed to break the spell. The crowd stirred. A few more people stepped forward, hesitant smiles on their faces. "Congratulations," someone said, their voice a little too loud in the quiet. "We had no idea. It was a private journey," I said, navigating the sudden flurry of attention. People peered at the babies, murmuring appreciative sounds. The energy in the room shifted from shock to curious excitement, but a palpable tension still lingered around my mother. She remained silent, a pale, rigid figure in the middle of the diffusing crowd. Sarah came over, a genuine, if bewildered, smile now on her face. "Wow," she breathed, looking at the babies. "You kept this quiet." "Very quiet," I said, meeting her gaze. There was a flicker of understanding in her eyes, a recognition of the years of pressure, the unspoken competition, the need for this moment on my own terms. Mark, bless his practical heart, just kept repeating, "Twins. How about that?" The next hour was a strange blur. I was surrounded by people, questions flying.
How old are they?
"What are their names?" "James and Lily," I told them. "Are they identical?" "Boy and girl." "Definitely not." I answered patiently, holding the babies, letting people ooh and ah. It felt surreal, this sudden public unveiling after so much secrecy. The babies slept through most of it, oblivious to the quiet revolution they had just instigated. All the while, I was intensely aware of my mother's presence. She didn't leave. She didn't come closer either. She stood slightly apart, observing, her face unreadable now, a mask of composure back in place, but the shock still lingering in her eyes. She spoke to other people, offered clipped, polite answers, but she didn't engage with me or the babies. Not directly. It was an odd kind of victory. Not loud or triumphant, but quiet and absolute. Her words, "You'll never have what they do," had been rendered utterly meaningless by the two small, undeniable lives in my arms. She couldn't refute it. She couldn't criticize it. She couldn't diminish it. It simply was. As the gathering began to wind down, and people drifted towards the reception hall, my mother finally approached me. She didn't look at the babies. Her eyes were fixed on my face. There was no apology, no warmth, not even curiosity.
Her voice was low, flat.
"You planned this," she stated, not a question. "I did," I replied, meeting her gaze steadily. A flicker of something, anger? Resentment? Crossed her face. "To embarrass me?" "To live my life," I said, my voice soft but firm. "To show you that having what they do isn't the only way to build a family. To show you I built my own." She stared at me for another long moment, searching my face, perhaps for the little girl who still craved her approval. But that girl wasn't here anymore. In her place was a woman who had fought for her happiness, who had built her own world, and who no longer needed her mother's permission to exist within it. She didn't say anything else. She simply turned and walked away, her back stiff, her shoulders set. She didn't go to the reception. I saw her leaving the church, alone, getting into her car. The rest of the day was strange. The reception was a mix of continued congratulations and awkward silence whenever my mother's absence was noted. My sister was kind, trying to bridge the gap, asking genuine questions about the babies and my journey. The extended family, initially shocked, seemed to adjust, curiosity overriding judgment. They passed the babies around, held them gently, admired their tiny fingers and toes. It felt like being initiated into a club I had been told I was not eligible for. But beneath the warmth and the cooing, there was a residue of the confrontation. The air around me felt subtly different. I was no longer the object of pity or speculation about my childless state. I was a mother of two. Suddenly, my career wasn't the defining feature of my life, it was just a part of it. I wasn't just me. I was James and Lily's mom. Walking away from the reception, the babies finally asleep in their carriers, the exhaustion hit me. Not just the physical tiredness of caring for newborns, but the emotional drain of the past few hours, the past few years. I had wanted this moment, this undeniable declaration of my life, my family. And I had it. It was powerful, vindicating. But it was also lonely. My mother's reaction, or lack thereof, was a confirmation of the chasm between us, a gap that perhaps could never be closed. Having what they do didn't just mean children. It meant the easy, uncomplicated acceptance within the family structure. And perhaps that was something I would never truly have, not in the way Sarah did. But holding James and Lily, looking at their perfect, peaceful faces, I knew I had something else. I had built a family on my own terms, through resilience, determination, and an abundance of love. It wasn't the family my mother envisioned for me, but it was my family. And it was more than enough. The validation I craved didn't need to come from her. It was here, breathing softly in the back seat. It was in the quiet strength I found to walk back into that church, had held high, babies in arms. It was in knowing that I had faced her cruel words and offered not a defense, but a living, breathing answer that transcended anything she could understand. I had built my own world, and they were the sun and moon within it. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.